Understanding the Psychology of Bias, a complete guide. 1. Bias blind spot. This is the tendency to see oneself as less biased than other people, or to be unaware of one's own biases. People often recognize the influence of biases in others, but fail to see it in themselves. 2. Sunk cost fallacy. This is the tendency to continue an endeavor once an investment in money, effort, or time has been made. This is irrational because it does not consider the overall cost compared to the current situation. 3. Bandwagon effect. This is the tendency for people to do something because others are doing it, regardless of their own beliefs, which can lead to groupthink and herd behavior. 4. Loss aversion. This is the tendency to prefer avoiding losses over acquiring equivalent gains. It can lead to irrational decisions as people are more focused on the potential loss than on the potential gain. 5. Negativity. Bias. This is the tendency to pay more attention and give more weight to negative experiences over positive ones. It can lead to a heightened sensitivity to potential threats or dangers in the environment. 6. Gambler's fallacy. This is the belief that if something happens more frequently than normal during a period, it will happen less frequently in the future or vice versa. This is often seen in gambling, where people believe that if a certain outcome hasn't occurred in a while, it's due to happen. 7. Omission. Bias. This is the tendency to judge harmful actions as worse or less moral than equally harmful omissions, inactions.
People often feel more guilty about negative outcomes that result from actions they took,
rather than from inaction. 8. Proportionality. Bias. This is the tendency to believe that there is a direct relationship between the size or strength of a cause and the size or strength of its effect. This can lead to overestimating or underestimating the impact of certain actions or events. 9. Moral credential effect. This occurs when people use a past good deed to justify or excuse a future immoral or unethical behavior. For example, someone might feel that because they have previously done something good, they can now do something bad without feeling guilty. 10. Self-serving. Bias. This is the tendency to attribute positive outcomes to oneself and negative outcomes to external factors. It's a way for people to protect their self-esteem and maintain a positive self-image. 13. Picture superiority effect. This is the phenomenon where information is more easily remembered if it is presented as a picture rather than as words. Pictures are often more vivid and engaging, leading to better retention. 14. Outcome. Bias. This is the tendency to judge a decision based on its outcome rather than on the quality of the decision at the time it was made. A good outcome can make a decision seem better than it actually was, and vice versa. 15. Mere exposure effect. This is the tendency for people to develop a preference for things simply because they are familiar with them. The more exposure someone has to something, the more they tend to like it. 16. Hard, easy effect. This is the tendency for people to overestimate their ability to perform well in difficult situations and underestimate their ability in easy situations. This can lead to underpreparation for challenging tasks. 17. Survivorship. Bias. This is the tendency to focus on the people or things that have survived some process and overlook those that did not, because of their lack of visibility. For example, only studying successful companies to learn about business practices without considering those that failed. 18. Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. This is the phenomenon where after learning about something for the first time, you start seeing it everywhere. It's also known as frequency illusion. 19. Availability heuristics. This is a mental shortcut that relies on immediate examples that come to mind when evaluating a specific topic, concept, method, or decision. People overestimate the importance of information that is readily available to them. 20. Dunning-Kruger effect. This is a cognitive bias in which people with low ability at a task overestimate their ability. It occurs due to a lack of self-awareness, preventing them from accurately assessing their own skills or knowledge. 21. Halo effect. This is the tendency for an impression created in one area to influence opinion in another area. For example, if someone is physically attractive, they may be perceived as more intelligent or kind, even without evidence supporting those traits. 22. Pygmalion effect. This is the phenomenon where higher expectations lead to an increase in performance. It is also known as the self-fulfilling prophecy, where people perform better because they believe they are capable of doing so. 23. Decoy effect. This occurs when people's preferences change between two options when a third, less attractive option is added. The less attractive option serves as a decoy that makes one of the other options seem more appealing. 24. Selection bias. This occurs when the sample used in a study or survey is not representative of the whole population, leading to inaccurate conclusions. It can occur if certain groups are systematically excluded from the study. 25. Anchoring bias. This is the tendency to rely too heavily on the first piece of information encountered, the anchor, when making decisions. Subsequent information is often interpreted based on the anchor, even if it's irrelevant to the decision at hand. 26. Confirmation bias. This is the tendency to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms one's pre-existing beliefs or hypotheses. People tend to ignore or undervalue information that contradicts their beliefs. 27. Overconfidence effect. This bias involves an overestimation of one's own abilities or knowledge. It is the tendency to believe that one's judgments are accurate, which can lead to making decisions without considering all relevant information. 28. Egocentric bias. This is the tendency for people to rely too heavily on their own perspective and to underestimate the perspectives of others. It can lead to misunderstandings and conflicts in interpersonal relationships. 29. Information bias. This is the tendency to seek out information, even when it has no bearing on one's decisions or actions. It can lead to information overload and distract from more relevant information. 30. Hindsight bias. Also known as the "I knew it all along" effect, this bias involves the inclination to see events as having been predictable after they have already occurred. People tend to overestimate their ability to have predicted the outcome of an event, once the outcome is known. 31. Projection bias. This is the tendency for people to assume that others share their beliefs, attitudes, and values. It can lead to misunderstandings and miscommunications, as people may project their own thoughts onto others. 32. Apophenia bias. This is the tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated things. It can lead to the belief in conspiracy theories or superstitions. 33. Serial position effect. This is the tendency to remember items at the beginning, primacy effect, and end, recency effect, of a list better than those in the middle. It can affect how we recall information presented in a sequence. 34. Recency bias. This is the tendency to weigh recent events more heavily than earlier events when making decisions or judgments. This can lead to overlooking long-term trends or patterns. 35. Authority bias. This is the tendency to attribute greater accuracy to the opinion of an authority figure, or perceived authority, and be more influenced by that opinion. It can lead to uncritical acceptance of information or ideas.